the passage of Scripture that I was led to, it's funny, Pastor Justin said, okay, you're going to be speaking on the 18th. This instantly came to my mind. How many of you know sometimes God has the exact thing for you right whenever you need it, and sometimes you got to seek Him so that He can give you what you need. But in this moment, He just said, this is what I want you to speak about. I knew it was Him because it didn't go away, and I got a lot more understanding after looking into it. But it's actually found in all three accounts of the Gospels. So I'm actually going to specifically be looking in the account in Mark, but I'm going to give you all three just that way you have it. It is in Matthew 8:28 through 34, Luke 8:26 through 39, and then Mark 5:1 through 20. So I'm going to go through that this morning. If you have any questions, I'll be here afterwards. But with that, I'm going to start in the first part of the section, first part of the verse. So Mark 5:1 through 20. Verse 5, or verse 1, brain. They went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. I went and found some cultural context, to what this actually was. And it's interesting to me what this was. But first, Jesus was at the beginning of His ministry here on earth. And He was teaching, and He was doing miracles. And by this point, He had gathered a large crowd that was following Him. But right in the middle of all of that, He took His disciples and He crossed the Sea of Galilee. He went to the other side, to the east side of it. And specifically, it says that He landed at the region of the Gerasenes, which is a part of a larger area known as the Decapolis. It's very interesting, all these words. It's going to be fun. But the Decapolis was actually a union of 10 different cities. At different times, there was a fluctuation in how many cities there were in this specific union, but they were all together. This area, the Decapolis, was specifically not fond of Jews. They're not fond of the Jewish people, their lifestyle and their culture. It goes back a little bit into history with that, but I'm not really going to talk about that because it's not important. But a lot of the Jewish people actually referred to the land as a pagan land. And so we look at this and we see that Jesus specifically got away from the crowds and He went across the sea to a land that most Jews would avoid. And so we see that He went there. Most Jews would not have gone there, but Jesus wasn't like most of them. He definitely was not like most of them. But as He went there, He left the crowds, and He went somewhere that wasn't expecting to see Him. I'm going to continue on verse 2. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet Him. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day, among the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. The moment that Jesus got there and He put His foot on the ground, He was met by this man. It's interesting that it's the exact moment that He was there that this happened. He had not spoken. He had not done any miracles there. He hadn't done anything except for a step there. And I want to ask you this, because this is kind of personal. I'm going to go into a story. But how many times, the moment we wake up and we put our foot on the ground, do we have something come at us? I'm going to give you a little bit of a personal illustration. Lynn, I love you very much. All right. If you do not know this, I am not really a huge morning person. It takes me a little bit to get adjusted. So, yes. One morning, I open my eyes very groggily and just sit there for a second. In that moment, my wife decided, he's awake. I think it's a good time to tell him about what needs to be done around here. And so she proceeds to speak very, very quickly about 20 different things that needed to be done at that exact moment. I was not prepared for that. But in that moment, I had a response. Luckily for me, I kept my mouth shut most of the time and said, okay. But many times, we have stuff that instantly hits us the moment we wake up. The moment we get up and start moving, we have something unexpected coming our way. And we're going to continue on with this. Let's look at the life of the man here specifically. We see that he had, it specifically says, an impure spirit. It has an impure spirit inside of him. And he was living in the tombs. That'd be the same thing today as if somebody was living over in the graves, which is weird. Not only is it some place that a lot of people see to honor, but it's also a place that a lot of people fear. But he was there, and in another account it says that the impure spirit led him there to isolation. But we see that he's there. Move that over. And he had been living with this impure spirit for a long time. In fact, it had been with him so long that the people around had noticed. He had started to bother them, or maybe they were just wanting help. But what they did is decided to put a chain on him. Decided to control him. You know, the world will have a solution for you. Sometimes the things that are inside of us are causing us to live in turmoil and pain. And the world will have a solution for you. Solution is a chain. It's a weight. Let me look at it specifically this. If you're doing something wrong, here's a list of rules to follow. If you follow it, you won't have any trouble. Sometimes people will say, all right, you're dealing with this. I can't help you in that. Take this. It'll make you feel better. The world will offer you solutions. It'll offer you something that may work for a little while. But just like in the context of the man with the impure spirit, eventually he was able to break the chains. In this, we see that he couldn't do it. The world was trying to help. And they thought that the thing that would help would be controlling. But instead, we don't see this is what happens with Christ. Continue on. Verse 6. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." I find it interesting that the man who had the impure spirit ran to Jesus. He didn't run away. Which makes me think maybe he had some sort of choice in this. You see that even whenever he was controlled by something inside of himself, he could still make a choice to run to Jesus. He went to him and he went to his knees. And if I'm thinking normally in myself, this guy who had an impure spirit in him had broken chains. Can any of you break a chain? Like, pull it apart? I can't. I mean, I am pretty muscly, but, that's a little bit above me. What was that? But I can't do that. But this guy could. Something in him was strong enough to do this. But the impure spirit's response spoke more than what his physical body was telling. He came to Jesus and he said, "Don't torture me." That's fear. Do you know how somebody who could do something so powerfully in that moment, was afraid. Do you know why he was afraid? Maybe it was because the impure spirit knew who Christ was. He could see, and he knew his character, and he knew his power. Christ could speak with authority because he had the authority. So the Spirit knew that whenever Christ told him to leave, he had no choice but to do it. It's interesting to me that he ran to him and pleaded. I'm going to look at verse 9. Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" He says, "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." Then he begged Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. This word legion actually had some cultural context to them. In the Roman government, a legion was a specific size, like a group of men. Specifically, it referred to anywhere between 4,000 and 6,000 soldiers. Scott, if you had 4,000 to 6,000 people that were ready to go work in construction and they were your employees, what could you possibly get done? That's a lot of people, right? You might have to send some home. I always thought it was interesting that the scriptures gave a specific emphasis on this point, that it wanted to mention this specific point. But as I went through and I've grown, I've realized that it was pointing to the fact that God is not afraid of the quantity. No matter how much, no matter how bad it seems to be, it holds no power next to him. I went through and gave some other instances that this doesn't exactly make sense that have to do with numbers, because I really like numbers. And I looked at the Bible and it says God tells you to give 10% and he will provide for you. Another one specifically, Gideon had 300 men against thousands of Midianites. And one man came to the earth to remove the sins of all men for all eternity. Whenever we look at it, the math doesn't add up. How bad our circumstance never adds up against God. God's math is always different, and he can stand behind it. I'm saying this because sometimes in our lives, we have something inside of us that will put a chain on us, that will hold us back and hold us down. It's a weight we can't bear. We can look for solutions throughout all this world, and we can find some. But those solutions do nothing but add more. You just put more weight on. And I think the one thing that this man did that changed everything for him was he ran and fell on his knees to the one who could change it all. How did he do that? Verse 11. A large herd of pigs was feeding on the nearby hillsides. The demons begged Jesus, Send us among the pigs. Allow us to go into them. And he gave them permission. The impure spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd was about 2,000 in number. Rushed down to a steep bank and into the lake and were drowned. God spoke, and things changed. God's authority, when Christ said, you have to leave, they had to obey. This morning, if God speaks to you, do you obey? Let me put it this way. When you read the Bible, and it says that you are more than conquerors, do you believe that? Because if that was true, why do we allow the weight and worries that we face in our lives to not move forward? Why does it make us feel defeated? We need to understand Christ's character and his power. Whenever we do that, we believe what he says. I'm a funny guy sometimes, and so for those of you who are paying attention, it was 2 to 3 impure spirits for every 1 pig, if you're doing the math. I pay attention to stuff like that, but that's just me. And in that moment, I find it interesting that Christ sent impure things into unclean animals. I'm going to move on. Let you think on that a little bit. Verse 14. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town and countryside. The people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they saw the man there who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man and told about the pigs. Then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave the region. There was something specific in this that I noticed. Jesus left the crowds, went across the sea, instantly was met by one man. That man had an encounter with Christ, a miracle that changed his life completely. And then, shortly after that, he got back in the boat and went back to the crowd. It's interesting to me that he went there and saved one. He left what was comfortable. He left his people. He went out of his way. And he went to some place that didn't want him. For one man. If you guys don't know already, each and every one of us is that one man. You don't have to look far in today's culture to see where they don't want Jesus. You can see where he has gone to a place that is not of his own. He did it exactly for us. And as we see that Jesus is getting back into the boat, to go back to where he came from, start in verse 18. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. Jesus did not let him go. But he said, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you." and how he has shown mercy on you." So then the man went away and began to tell the people in Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him. And all the people were amazed. How many of us are amazed by what Christ has done for us? How many people have been amazed by what Christ has done for you? You know what that requires? Speaking. Living your life as a testimony is a great thing. But the older and older I get, especially after having Jasper and thinking about teaching, he's not going to know simply by me doing what's right. I have to instruct him. We are commanded that to go and give our testimony for what Christ has done for us. We don't get much context into what happens after this point, after Christ leaves, and how the area has been changed. But we do see that it says all the people were amazed. Sometimes the one that Christ goes to and does something miraculous for can do something that amazes the world. There are things in each and every one of our lives that has the power to transform and to lead people to Him if we speak it. So my question on that is, would Christ go out of his way for you? Would he go for those who are alone, that are in the graves? And would he do it for somebody who didn't want him? I know in my life, many times, I've decided to go and do my own thing. Luckily for me, as I've gotten older, it's less. And I'm more responsive whenever he speaks. But he did all of this for me. Someone who would have not thought that I was not a good person, to put it directly. He went out of his way for someone who wasn't really looking for him, who was alone, who had something in his life inside of him that was broken and needing restoration. So this morning, if you have something inside of you that is pushing you and you can't control it, you've been fighting it, you've been trying to do what's right, God can give you freedom from that. And he can restore you to a whole identity of who you are in him. This morning, all you need to do is see who he is and believe what he says. And if we have been so freely been given a gift, this morning we also need to go out and share that gift with everyone around us. This morning, I ask that if you have any needs, you need to take some time to speak with God on any of these things. The altars are open. You're free to stay in your seats. But I know in my life, I can say I'm okay sitting here. But really all I'm saying is I'm comfortable where I'm at. Sometimes we need to go out of our way to have an encounter with the one who can change it all.